I'm Lisa Rubel from Love to Color My World, and today I'm going to show you a great quilt design that you can use for a pack of 5-inch squares. They're so tempting to buy, all these neatly packaged pre-cut pieces that you can just get started with, but the key is knowing the pattern that you want to use. And the up and down pattern, which is a free download when you purchase a set of pre-cut 5-inch squares from Sit and Sew Fabrics, is such a fun pattern to do because it's got so much movement with the up and down of the blocks. This quilt is made using half square triangles, and I'm going to show you how to put those together. So to make the up and down quilt, we're going to be using half square triangles. And in addition to your pack of 5-inch pre-cut squares, you're going to need a contrasting fabric, 7/8 of a yard. I've got a white on white fabric, which contrasts really nicely with the blues and greens in my swatch pack. And the first thing we're going to do is to draw diagonal lines on the wrong side of the fabric. And if you do have a white on white, you want to double check that you are on the wrong side. Of course, if you have a solid, either side can be the wrong side. You don't have to worry about it. So I've got a fabric marking pen, and I'm going to align my ruler from corner to diagonal corner on a square and draw a line. And I like to line up a couple of these at a time and do them. I don't recommend drawing on all 40 squares at once, because if you have an air-soluble pen, the lines might disappear before you get to sewing all of those together. So do a couple at a time. These are great blocks to chain piece, and then you can go back and draw a couple more and then go and piece them. So I'm going to take one of my pre-cut squares, and I'm going to put my marked white square on top and align the raw edges. I'm going to just put a couple pins in to secure it. And then we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch off of the center drawn line. So over here, down one side, and then you can lift your needle, pivot your squares, and then stitch down the other side as well, a 1/4 inch from that center line that we've drawn, and that will become 2 half square triangles. Okay, so here is my stitched unit. I've got my drawn line down the center and my 2 stitched lines, one on either side of it. I'm going to realign my ruler with those 2 corners, which will be on my drawn line as well, and then cut to separate them. And I'll end up with 2 half square triangle units. There we go. I'm going to take them over to my iron. I prefer to iron away from my light colored fabric. If you're not using a light colored fabric, just press them all in the same direction so you've got consistency. So always press toward your print or toward your contrasting fabric, either one. And then our last step to finishing these blocks is to trim them to measure 4.5 inches square. They won't need much of a trim, but you're going to align the diagonal line on your ruler. And this, if you've got a smaller square ruler, I've got a 6.5 inch here, that's really nice just because it's easy to manipulate. You don't need a big 12.5 inch square one. So I'm going to align that and just trim the tiniest bit off, and then that little corner triangle. And if you don't end up trimming off the pinked edges, don't worry, they will disappear in your seam allowance. And then when I flip it over, I'm going to check that diagonal line and also check that the 4.5 inch lines on my ruler align with my half square triangle unit. And again, I'm mostly just trimming off those the seam allowance corners and then a little bit more, and I've got my finished half square triangle. So you're going to make 80 of these half square triangles, which means you'll be using 40 of the squares from your swatch pack, so you'll have 2 left over. And after you've got all of them made and trimmed up to 4.5 inches square, then it's all about the layout. And for this quilt, the layout the direction, the orientation of each of your units is what makes this zigzag effect. So whether you use a design wall or just lay it out on the floor or your cutting table, you want to make sure that in each row you're rotating your half square triangles so that you get this up-down effect. And make sure that then when you're sewing the units together, you're putting them together correctly so that you end up with that effect. So you're going to make 10 different rows of 8 blocks each. And in each row, you'll be alternating which way you do your seam allowance. So in the first row, you'll do your seam allowance going in one direction. In the second row, you'll press the seam allowance in the opposite direction. And that way, when you join the rows, your seam allowances will be able to nest with each other. You'll get nice crisp points. So again, double check your layout before you start sewing pieces together so you get that nice zigzag look, and have fun assembling this quilt. When your quilt top is done, then you can layer it with your batting and your backing, baste it, quilt it however you like. A great way to quilt a zigzag quilt like this is to stitch a 1/4 inch on each side of your zigzag, and that sort of echoes that look, and it's pretty easy to do because you're just following your seams. And then bind your quilt and it's done. This one goes together really quickly, and it's got such a fun kind of modern look to it. So enjoy making it.